Lead balloons.
It's the alchemy of
Unpopular opinions. So,
whoops, I have somewhere to be. There's actually bourbon in this, so everyone knows.
those things are very complicated and
I don't know that I actually believe what I'm about to say.
spreading lies.
This critical culture that we live in.
Just to try to be an asshole.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another spicy edition of Lead Balloons, the alchemy of unpopular opinions. Hello there, Joel.
What's up, my buddy Trent?
Doing good, feeling good. Glad to be with you. So, Joel, today we're going to talk about Donald Trump, Trumpism, and cult-like behaviors. So we're gonna draw some parallels between cults and people's fervor for Donald Trump. Yeah. So this is kind of a hot button issue. Not expecting a very warm reception in all quarters for this one, but let's come right out of the gate with some intrigue here. Joel, if you could be a cult founder, what kind of cult would you found? What would it be about? What would be some foundational features? Tell us about your cult fantasy.
I mean, the religious cults are kind of like stale to me. That's boring. Seen that, done that kind of thing. I'd want to do something with a little bit more like ridiculousness, like maybe base it upon this idea that we're all living in a simulation. And so everyone that I've convinced that I'm like the programmer of the simulation, maybe, like I'm the maker of the Matrix. And then they all just bring me like, they go out, make a bunch of money and bring me money. And I pour like algorithms their way or whatever it may be. But I think a more fascinating one would be to be like a vampire cult that I would be. I saw I was reading the other day, there was this cult leader and she had pronounced that she was the reincarnation of both Jesus Christ and Marilyn Monroe. And I was just like, oh, that's really interesting. Bring some pop culture in there. What if I was like I was maybe the character that Edward from Twilight was based upon. Like I'm him in real life. Like I'm a vampire. And then people come to like have immortality with me. And I kind of do a reverse transubstantiation. Instead of like praying over the wine and turning it into blood, I pray over blood that becomes wine for our communion. And so it's kind of like untransubstantiation. I think that could be really interesting.
That's exciting. Yeah, I would say for me, I'd like to have a Lord of the Rings cult where I can just scrub the book from everybody's memory. And then I would come out with the book as if I had written. I mean, nobody would know anything about Tolkien or anything. And I would just present the book, but not as fiction. It would be real. I'd be able to convince enough people that this stuff was real. And then I would sort of declare myself as kind of a Gandalf, Aragorn, Faramir hybrid. I'd have sort of the wisdom of Gandalf. I'd have the regality of Aragorn and like the game of Faramir. And I would just be this unstoppable force. So this is an inchoate fantasy. It's in the beginning stages. It's not been fleshed out, but that's kind of where I'd go with it. So
I foresee you having, the over-under is about 10, over-under 10 harems. So that's what...
10 harems. My goodness, that's busy. That's exhausting. Okay. All right. So, it's a bit of a reach here tonight. So we're trying to make this connection between what we perceive to be sort of people's fervor and excitement for Donald Trump, which is... We've had so many presidential candidates and presidents come and go, and each of them arouses their own sort of fury and love from different quarters. But Trump's something unique, I would say, that I've seen at least in my lifetime. I think you'd agree with that. And some of the fervor and attachment to him has a cult-like quality. So let's see if we can make some connections. But before that, let's define our terms, Joel. Let's first sort of get people on the same page for what are we talking about when we talk about a cult? What are some of the criteria?
Great question, Trent. And before I dive into that, I want to give a shout out. This topic that we're covering, it was actually a request from a listener, Paul, out there. Thanks, man, for this request, like the Trump cult. So, I mean, the cult of Trump. So, asking for that. So here we are diving into that. When we're talking about cults, this is a sociological, psychological like description. This is a category that people study. There are cult leaders and there are traits and there are categories to define and criteria to define what is a cult and what isn't. And it is a bit of a squishy line of when you start getting to the boundaries of what that means. But generally speaking, what you're going to find with a cult is not necessarily a huge following like something like Trump. So this is where, Trent, you were saying this is a bit of a reach, right? It's generally a smaller group of people. It might be a large group of people, but they are generally isolated. There is a strong wall between them and the outside world. There's usually a strong us versus them kind of mentality. And that can be fleshed out politically, religiously defined. It can be just a sense of the world is evil and we are clean, or we are the righteous, they are the unrighteous. You'll see a lot of that kind of language that's psychologically working through the people to make them kind of keep people in line. That's what you're going to see, a lot of psychological control. There's tends to be an authoritarian leader. So this is usually someone with really great charisma. This is going to be someone that is skilled with social engineering. Sometimes they have expertise around something. It might be they have expertise around the Bible, or the expertise around science fiction, or whatever it may be. But you're going to hear some very gifted communicators, typically, when you're talking about cult leaders. There's generally no accountability. These cult leaders have found ways to kind of steer clear of any kind of accountability. And if there's criticism or dissension, it is vehemently punished. There's usually strong, coercive tactics to keep people in line, to make sure people understand that if you get out of line, this is what's going to happen to you. We see this happen in religion throughout the centuries with excommunicating. No one wants to be excommunicated because that means you're being set apart from your community. And in a pre-industrial world, being set apart and sent out of your community was death, right? It was you lost all meaning for your own life. There's a lot of communal control. I mean, I think you can fear tactics, shame tactics. There's a lot of like honor, shame, really like celebrating the people who are complicit, celebrating the people who are in line, and then like putting down the totem pole. There's in cults, there's a very clear line of hierarchy, and then there's a veneration of the one at the top, and no questions for that. You're talking about people like Jim Jones, who led the People's Temple, that famously went down to South America and drank all the Kool-Aid and died together. David Koresh down in Waco, Texas, in the Branch Davidians, also relied heavily on Bible teachings and doomsday end of the world kind of thinking, militarizing their protection from the people who didn't get them, right? There's a documentary on Netflix about Warren Jeff, the guy that from the fundamentalist version of the Latter-day Saints, who is like sleeping with all kinds of underage girls, and it all came to light, and it was disgusting in the amount of people that were complicit to that. And then even within our own traditions, Trent, you and I went to a charismatic university. Charismatic Christianity, I would say the Achilles heel is this cult-like leader. And we can all remember that the televangelists from the 70s and 80s and 90s that all fell, people like the Jimmy Swaggars, the Jim Bakkers, the Ted Haggards, while they might not fit every criteria of a cult, they definitely have some overlap with the kind of the veneration of the leader. There's a very group think that starts to happen. and people, their critical thinking skills kind of just lower, and everyone just starts swimming with the flow, like a group of just, salmon just all swimming downstream, that all just begins to happen. And for any human being who's in that swarm, it's hard to break free, both physically and psychologically.
Yeah, that's a great rundown. A lot of good information there, Joel. To tack on to what you've just said about like the charismatic iterations, appearances of this phenomenon. I remember in college, my freshman year, I think it was my freshman year, that Ed Gunger founded Believers Church, maybe slightly before that, but it became huge. And he would have Friday night services, so you could go on Friday night and you didn't have to then wake up and go to church on Sunday. You just had your little ticket that said you went to Believers Church. It was your stay, instead of get out of jail free, it was your stay in bed card on Sunday morning. But I remember running into people who started referring to Believers Church as Gungers. And I knew even at that young age that there was something wrong with that just didn't quite resonate with me. And I hope that I never used that phrase myself. But, oh, we're going to Gungers tonight. I'm like, nah, we're already headed in the wrong direction already.
Yeah.
He was an enormously powerful speaker, enormously influential personality. Obviously, he had his own sexual scandal there, which probably, I mean, anybody could have seen that one coming. But like, it's he was this great charismatic figure, man. I liked listening to him talk, and he was very compelling. But that's what happens. You get these characters who create this larger than life persona. And
I would say he was one of the softer versions of that cult of personality.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, he was on that spectrum for sure, but golly, of the many I've seen that fall into that cult of personality, he was one of the lightweights in terms of group
so
think.
that's saying something. Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so we've got authoritarianism, no accountability, communal control, isolation from society, veneration of a leader, and then you've shared some of these examples. So like the Venn diagram is when you have like two circles, and then in when the two circles overlap, there's that sort of space where they overlap, and so that's the Venn diagram there. And so let's talk about like cult behavior in one circle, and like Trumpism, or the veneration of Trump in the other. And let's talk about sort of like where these overlap. So I'll lead you into this, but just like some ideas are like charismatic leader, someone with a big idea, polarity, hate bonding, persecution, paranoia, etc. To go into this a little bit more in terms of fleshing out where some of the overlaps might be that you perceive.
I mean, he is a charismatic individual. He created a TV show from himself. And I mean, this guy it's so interesting. He tried to run for president years before and didn't make it, made a TV show. And the way that he just kind of puts himself out there and takes these gigantic risks and trusts his ability to wiggle out when it doesn't work in his favor is pretty impressive. So here's a guy who has some, there are people who say he's a dummy and he's not smart, but I would disagree. Like whatever he is not unintelligent.
No.
And he has a strong ability to socially engineer and manipulate people psychologically. One thing about cults that I see that happen is they tend to prey on people who have a strong psychological need. Typically, for the classical cults, it's a need for belonging. They are they're just vulnerable to that kind of love bombing. You'll hear that say these days. And what Trump was able to do is capitalize, I think, on a lot of a growing, congealing concern in our culture, primarily from white people. I think when they did the demographics of his voting, I think it was 85% white people. And there was a sense that he was able to capitalize. I'm gonna get back to like good business, even though history says he's a crooked business guy. He just is, but he can tell people that and they'll believe that. And then he would talk about immigration. That was the big thing. Like, we're going to keep people away. And so he becomes a messenger of like reforming, like Puritan, like we're going to get back to a Puritan idea, hence make America great again. What does that even mean? Make America great again. When were we great and what was that great? It doesn't matter. People aren't thinking about that. They just hear the message of like, I don't like where I'm at. I'm feeling like powerless with my situation. And here is someone who's saying they have the cure. And that is very attractive to people in spaces of desperation. So not everyone who voted for Trump was a desperate person, right? Some people I know are like, I voted for him even though I don't like him, but these are my political persuasions. That's why I voted for him. But I would say that Trump has created a following that is, to your point, more like the fervor and the charisma and the willingness to kind of treat this like a revolutionary movement is troubling. It's troubling because it just tells me that people psychologically are in space. They are reacting to deep insecurities. It's fight or flight kind of responses that are happening. And when you talk to people about why and you're trying to dig behind it, they don't have answers. They're just like, he's better, and I see that the Venn diagram to where there's a sense of swimming with the stream and feeling good about it. People are in that stream, they feel good, and everyone else is the enemy. It's a lot of black and white thinking. What about you, man?
That's right.
Do you see other things I didn't say?
Yeah, I think, but something I want to add to it is like, first of all, we're not really going deep into, we're not dissecting sort of like his policies and
No.
I mean, there's been things that he's done that I've liked. So we're not digging deep into sort of his platform and everything he did or didn't do as a president. And also, I mean, there've been other presidential candidates who have made grandiose claims and promised big things and with very nebulous wording. But I think the thing that if you think back, Joel, you'd probably agree with me on this. Like, if I think back through my lifetime, Ronald Reagan versus like Mondale, George Bush versus Gore, Al Gore. George H.W. versus Dukakis, and then you had Bush Gore, and then running against each other, and then you had Bush Kerry in 2004 and 2008 as McCain. Like, nobody in all those times, like, the sort of ferocity wasn't there for the support of these people typically in such a widespread fashion as it has been for Donald Trump. People a lot of times are like, well, we got Bush as our candidate. I would have preferred somebody else, or okay, John Kerry this, or Obama, but I haven't seen that same sort of, like, I'm sure in pockets it's there, but my sense is that at a larger scale there's been this real strong attachment to Donald Trump and this willingness to sort of defend him at all costs, beyond sort of a basic platform that the candidate is about. It's about like the person and how everybody is against this person. And we talk a little bit more about sort of the binary thinking. It's like the lack of nuance here is alarming to me, because I don't think any one person is all bad, and I don't think there's a few people, maybe I do, but I don't think even bad people are all bad, and I don't even think good people are all good. There's darkness in the best of us, and there's light in the worst of us. There's this sense that, like, everything he says is true, and everybody who's critiquing him has an agenda and is part of the dark side. And it's like, boy, is that a realistic way to look at it? And is that an adult way to look at this issue? I think that's really concerning, is when people are willing to or if you mention something that you don't like, a lot of times you get the reaction, well, look at freaking Biden. Look at what Biden has done. It's like, we'll get to Biden. I haven't said anything about exonerating him because I'm not on a team like maybe you claim to be. But let's just talk about some of the things that are concerning. Can we? Or the moment I do that, it's like I've just criticized one of your family members or something.
Yeah. And that's what I think is the overlap with the cult.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have to be honest, Trent. I think I mentioned this beforehand. This topic makes me sad. Like, I feel sad about this topic. Not because, again, this is not a whole lot to do with politics. I have my views around gun control and immigration and abortion and all these so-called controversial topics. But that is not what this is about to me. What I see Trump as is a litmus test for the society that I am a part of. And I get sad. I grew up in churches where I would see adults act like utter imbeciles. Just people who like were so mean-spirited and not rational, unkind, did hurt and harm to people they claim to love. And I'm now watching that happen on a national scale. It's the kind of thing where you're just you learn about some horrendous situation in a family where someone was abusive, and you're like, how could you be a part of that family, love that family, and do those sorts of things? I feel the same dissonance, and this may be a strong statement, but it's how I feel. I watch people really I've watched some just go all in on Trump, and I've watched some kind of convince themselves slowly to go in on Trump. People that are intelligent, educated, that I deem to be loving people, and the blind spot that I see happening is so discouraging. Like, how do we expect to do anything wise as a culture with that massive blind spot just right there? And our media is exploiting it. They love our blind spots because that gives them polarizing messages that makes them money. They don't care about telling us what's true or what's good. They care about making money. That's why they exist. So we listen to the news that is now exacerbating our insecurities. And I don't know, as you're kind of talking about this Trumpism, I just feel myself kind of going back to that kid who's sitting on the pew in my church, and I'm watching the annual church meeting, and people are unhappy with the pastor that we happen to have at the time. And here are these people who teach Sunday school classes standing up, yelling angrily about like benign stuff, like spending money on new carpet, right? Whatever it may be. It's just utter insanity that's happening. And just as a kid going like, oh, even the adults don't know what the fuck they're doing. Got it. That's the world I live in. And that's what I feel when I watch this stuff with Trump. Here's this guy. It doesn't matter how many times he gets indicted. It doesn't matter. All it does is make them double down, triple down, quadruple down on him being the Messiah, him being the persecuted hero. And while everyone and anything that's against him is their enemy. Yeah. I was at a birthday party of someone that I really respect. And he was telling me he's an intelligent, educated person, but he's one of the ones I've watched slowly crawl towards just more and more open, fundamentalist conservative views, and just like defending the insurrectionists or the people who like, however he would have framed it, people who cared about their country and stormed the Capitol and hurt people, and he was defending them. And he's like, did they really, all they were really doing? I'm just like, oh my God, you really don't really don't think about this in a straight way, do you? And I remember I just kind of smiled and nodded, and in those moments, I'm not going to create a weird discussion at a birthday party, but I'm just going, I don't know how to talk to you.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
now I just feel sad. Just feel sad.
Because again, like I think that the kind of society that we want to live, that I want to live, and I think you do, people should, I think, is one in which we can have really energetic debates about policies and the merits and disadvantages of certain policies. But I would have preferred that people said something like, good, honest Republicans saying, hey, listen, I don't like the guy. He turns me off. But I think that he supports an agenda that's more important than, let's say, Hillary Clinton did or Joseph Biden did. Say, I really support that approach. I cry and mourn because we have these kinds of candidates. That's sad to me. But I'm going to vote for him because apparently democracy means choosing between a shit sandwich and a glass of urine. That's what the meaning of democracy has become.
Yep.
And so just choosing between.
I'm trying to think right now. I'm imagining drinking or eating those options.
Yeah, do you want a sandpaper massage, or do you want an ice pick jam down your penis hole? It's like, what would you prefer to have? Oh, I prefer to have the sandpaper massage. Boom, you are a true patriot. I mean, this is nonsense. So we ought to be sad. We ought to be sad about it. But then people, they join this team, and it's now I'm part of this team. And being part of this team has now become more important than being part of being an American. Is I'm part of this team, and you are the other. It's like, boy, is that a robust and vigorous patriotism? I don't think so.
I think it's so common, Trent. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just saying, I think it's common.
Yeah, I don't think that's a vision of patriotism. So yeah, it's a, like you said, it's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. Let's talk about another feature of this phenomenon, which was fascinating to us, and that is sort of like Trump sort of harnessed the blue collar small business community and integrated that into sort of the Republican Party in ways that it hadn't been before. I mean, blue collar voters and the small business community, I think, probably was part of the Republican Party for a long time. But like blue collar workers, union people, for a long time had probably mostly aligned with the Democratic Party, and that has swung. That has swung in recent election cycles. And how did Donald Trump get these people to come over to his side? They were venturing a little bit outside of maybe the cult thing now, but I think it is maybe a evidence of his personal power to bring people into the fold.
I mean, you look at Donald Trump and his history, the best description I've ever seen of him is he's a chameleon. He at one point was a Democrat, and his ability to move and kind of shuck and jive and kind of get where he wants to go is pretty impressive. He knows how to adapt, and he's an opportunist. That's the best description I could say of him. And what he saw was an opportunity, and there was one, and continues to be one, and it is to exploit a felt division within our country. And his goal is not unity. His goal is not greatness. His goal is not goodness. His goal is to get to, and it's the same goal he's always had, to accumulate power and wealth. I mean, you look at his life, it's clear that has been his goal almost all the time. And so it's a worthwhile question. How did he somehow connect with all of these blue collar people who typically do not trust the elites of our country. And Donald Trump is a New York elitist. But somehow he spoke the vernacular that got into their hearts, that made them feel heard, that made them feel this base feel like he got them. And, whether it's authentic to him or whether it's just him, saying the right things, it's irrelevant because it worked. And so we have, I think, Trump using some just old-fashioned kind of sales tactics. I don't know that it's really super sophisticated. It's just straight up know what the need is, communicate that you have the answer, and then use persuasion tactics and pressure sales tactics and these sorts of things to like get the person to really commit to the purchase. And he's obviously really good at it. Just kind of a side note, I was on some Reddit subreddit. I don't even remember. I tried to go back and find this the other day. It was a comment. One of my favorite things on Reddit are the comments. I think that is where Reddit shines, is you have these brilliant basement comedians who are leaving the most brilliant comments about something, and they are hilarious or whatever they are. But it was an article about politics, something to do with Trump. But someone went on there and said, and again, I don't know if this is, I can't go back and like research to see if this is accurately true, but it was interesting. The person said, my parents had a run-in with Trump back in the late 80s. And they had a house in some town in New England. I think it was, a wealthy area in Massachusetts somewhere. And there was an area where Trump was buying up property, and when their parents decided they were not going to sell, and they were just like, we're not interested in selling, Trump actually called them up and started like talking angrily at them, saying that he's going to send all his lawyers at them, he's going to sue their asses off, they're in over their heads, and just like lambasted them on the phone. And then when they said, we're still not going to sell, he hung up and nothing happened. That's what I mean. Someone who's, Trump will say when he was on The Apprentice, I was in billions of dollars in debt, but I fought my way back because I used my negotiation skills. That's his negotiation skills. Being a bully and being able to not cross the line to get, too much in trouble to where he can't get himself out of the hole, but willing to do almost everything short of that. And as we know, all the stuff that comes out, he crossed the line plenty of times, and he still figures out a way to slither out of the consequences. And so I think that's part of the reason is we have ourselves a very gifted salesman who has found a way into the hearts and minds of a group of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's well said. When I was in college, I was part of the RA program, resident advisor program, and so maybe I could elaborate on that, so a lot of people know what that is. But I mean, most universities have some sort of like RAs for campus living, but an RA is kind of like the parent on the floor in a sense. You're kind of making sure everyone's sort of in line. You're kind of a police force, but when I was part of the RA program, when we went to our RA meetings, there was a lot of sort of just like leadership development classes that we took, and there were a lot of wise people that I came across. So I'm really thankful for that experience. So there was this one guy, I won't say his name, but he was a very wise person. He wasn't an RA, but he would often come to our meetings, and he was an older guy, kind of just a sage type person, and became a very, very close friend. But he would ask great questions and leave you with them, and they would turn over in your head and really force you to think about things in a new way. So anyway, this was in like 98, 99, something like that. The Clinton Lewinsky scandal was going on, and everybody was up in arms. And he was making a comment. He said something like, he was talking about our response as Christians, and he said, should our response as Christians be such that we give people the message that character counts? I love the way he said that, because it told me, like, that we ought to at least aspire to be in a society where our biggest leaders are the kind of people that we might want to admire. Now, I don't think that I don't want to delve into that whole situation. In terms of whatever Clinton did, lying under oath and conducting himself that way with Lewinsky, and I think the unkind things that he said to her, and the lies that he told about what went on, and that going on, those, that sexual relationship happening in that place, and cheating on his wife, all kinds of nefarious things were happening there. So not good. And that's why this guy said, let's give people the reason to believe that character matters. Now, nowadays, I'm told by Christians that the character of a president is subordinate to whatever agenda items he's able to get through, whatever Supreme Court justices that he can pass through who are conservative, whatever policies he can support and get signed off on that are going to be reflective of sort of Christianity, it all justifies the means of being an unkind person and being a bully and speaking derisively to many, many people, and saying things that stir up the worst in people. All that's okay because he does our business. Well, I don't remember it being okay when Bill Clinton was doing those things. You and I were talking a little bit about a Christianity Today story that came out. Can you tell us more about that story, Joel?
Yeah, I can't remember when this came out. It was near the time of the impeachment hearings of Trump. And what Christianity Today decided to do is they released their article that they had written when Clinton's impeachment hearings were happening. So basically, they had put into print, they just reprinted everything that they said about their opinions about President Clinton, which were very much aligned what you were kind of saying. This character counts. Our leaders need to be above board. We, godly standards, all these sorts of things. And what Christianity Today then, in a very clever way that I thought, was to say, we are not being consistent here with Trump. The message that was, just a decade ago, not even that long ago, has now morphed it's been perverted so much that people are now saying the exact opposite to protect. God uses evil rulers all the time. That's kind of I'm like, oh my God. I get so sad.
God'll even commit genocide if he needs to.
I know. I just get so sad. I don't know how to talk to people. Like, I really want to I want to believe what's good I want to believe that these are good people that just are confused. Or I want to believe that these are like people that are really scared. So this is how they're kind of like acting to protect themselves and what they think is being threatened. But there's a part of me that is just disgusted. It's just disgusted. I can understand why Jesus threw tables over in the temple. I can understand why Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace, but to bring a sword. And then he got crucified by the religious and the political leaders of the day. So I get why these Christians are so out of touch with their Christianity. It is so disturbing and sad to me. I can't say that stronger, that I see a people in this country that are extraordinarily deceived by their own egos. I'm not going to blame this on Trump. Trump is just some aberration that is revealing the hearts of the people. That's what I kind of see this happening. And I want to tell this people group, like, you don't have to be so afraid, guys. You don't, your world isn't falling apart. You don't have to compromise and shove aside things that your conscience is screaming at you to not compromise. You don't have to shut that voice into a closet to follow this. You can actually try and come out and live in this messy world. I don't like Biden either, but I sure as hell don't like Trump. So join us in this conversation where we can just be honest about what we're seeing and what we're dealing with versus the very, like, just kind of regressed adolescent perspective of black and white. I'm going to follow this person.
Yeah.
And that is where that Venn diagram crosses over, because it has all the markings of someone who's been brainwashed.
Yes. And I think what's fascinating too, like, a lot of times when it comes to like politics, a lot of Christians sort of have this view of, this is kind of more of like to use a technical term, like dispensationalism, right? There's sort of like, there's sort of the kingdom of God, which is sort of an ethereal thing. It's going to be purely spiritual. And then you have like the kingdom of man, kingdom on earth, which is a whole different thing. And so, like, let's not get these things confused. And we've got one thing here and one thing there. But then, so that would seem to make sense. That would then square with people's view of Trump. It's like, okay, we've got heavenly stuff. We'll go evangelize, but in the politics saying it doesn't matter. We don't care who's in there. But there's a lot of people who are part of sort of that white nationalist or Christian national. I shouldn't say. I don't want to say the white nationalism, because that's a subgroup on its own. But the Christian, this whole sort of, I misspoke. Christian nationalism is sort of this view that we're going to anticipate the kingdom of God here and now, and that we're going to try to approximate it as much as possible. And I would just simply say to those people, well, if that's the case, I mean, you are aware of the character of Christ, right? From Philippians chapter 2, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking on the very nature of a servant, and being made in human likeness. He basically gave himself up to, became obedient to death, even death on a cross. And so then Paul says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. It's the idea of Jesus he humbled himself, and then he was exalted. Well, if the fucking king of the universe came to the earth that way, don't you think that the president of the United States, who you believe is God's anointed, should fucking behave the same way? And I mean, do we see
even similarly,
or even roughly similar? I mean, do you see any overlap between the character, behavior of the person and the compassion of Jesus and fucking Donald Trump? No, you don't. And so, but no, I mean, again, we say all this stuff. I know I'm just talking in the air. This would be like expecting the average Christian to be reading their Bible and trying to do it. I know that's not what it's about. You're not even going to church. You just want to be part of that team and hope you can go to heaven someday when you die.
I mean, I share your anger, Trent. I share it. Like, I remember, back when I was a pastor, when we transitioned what was traditionally a conservative church to being inclusive of our LGBTQ members, we did it very slowly, very carefully, very thoughtfully. But there were a lot of people there who were close friends, not just kind of friends, close friends, whose attitudes towards me shifted on a dime. They just I was their favorite Bible teacher. They trusted me so explicitly. And the moment I began to try and explain to them why I had come to these different conclusions, their hands went over their ears, and they were so disappointed. They felt so betrayed. Like I had betrayed them. And, I get that feeling, but like, what did I betray? My pursuit of what's true and loving? I mean, all I betrayed was your belief that you really hadn't studied that much about. That's all I betrayed.
Joel,
and
the last... Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So I just want to say there was one couple I remember talking to, beautiful, beautiful couple. And it was primarily the mother, and she had grandchildren. That's how old she was. But her son was gay. And he was married, and she was telling me how even all throughout his life, when they would come stay with her for, holidays, she would make them sleep in different bedrooms because that's, her faith, her views wouldn't allow that. She wasn't comfortable with it. And basically what I got from conversing with her, she was so distraught when she was talking to me about us trying to make this transition in the community. And I was explaining to her, it's like, actually, you don't have to change your views on anything. We want to be welcoming to perspectives that are inclusive and perspectives that don't see it the same way. We want this to be a place where everyone can hold those views and practice love. That was kind of our what we're trying to accomplish, which, by the way, most people are not interested in love. They are more interested in being on a team. But what I got from her was, for her to even consider changing her view meant that she would have to go back and go, oh, I was wrong to treat my son that way. And I saw that in her eyes, and that she was just not willing to go there. And I think I see some of that in the eyes of people who follow Trump. There's like, they have such like, I'm not looking at, all the porn stars and Playboy models that he's sleeping with. That's over there. Let's not talk about that. All the the lies, or how our court systems are indicting him. Let's talk about it. It's there's this real sense to own up to that now means that they have to acknowledge a ton of decisions that they made along the way that would probably be pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. One thing I would suggest for people to maybe lighten the spirits just a tad is this is an idea. So presidential politics becomes binary. We have Team A, Team B, Democrat, Republican, and we're led to believe that this is the epitome of democracy. Every 4 years, we get to come around and crowd around and watch CNN and Fox News and decide who's going to be president. We get to pick one of two, and Lord knows how it ended up being these two characters. And this is a reflection of sort of the height of democracy. Well, you can also practice democracy by refusing to participate in sham, fake, farcical travesties. Yes, you can do that. You can not vote for a president. Now, is that strategically the best thing to do? Oh, well, if you don't vote for this person, this other person is going to get in, and they're going to have these Supreme Court justices. And yes, I get it. But one way to announce to the political machines that are controlling who the candidates are going to become is not voted. Can you imagine? I mean, this won't happen, but can you imagine if the precincts start on election night, the precincts from like New York start pouring in, and it's like 80% of precincts reporting. It's like, we have 52 votes for so-and-so and 38 for the other. And it's like, what? The president would come up and be like, the president would just be like, his acceptance speech would sort of be like this confused look, like, well, a few American people have made it abundantly clear that
the American
that I have
voice.
a mandate from 1,000 people. I would just love that, right? So that they would know that the gig is up, and we've all seen through it. It's just a bunch of horse shit. But that is one option. It is one option. So
I hope to do a podcast on the morality of voting and how that is so much, especially amongst more socially progressive churches. It's just this, you have to vote. If you don't vote, you're not morally, civically responsible. I'm just like going, this is such a story. I do vote, but I don't feel like it matters. And especially when I'm looking at and I've gotten a lot into local politics, and people say, well, that matters more. I'm like, I guess. I've been around long enough now to kind of just go, we're mostly just circling the drain here, guys. We're just on a different side of the toilet bowl.
Yeah, that's right. Different set of titles. Okay. All right. Well, okay, so let's Jill, we're getting close to the end here. So I think we may have some other things we want to dive into, but maybe we'll hold those for later unless you have a burning desire. But can you finish with any sort of hopeful ways forward?
My way of coping with all of this sadness and
Heavy
disillusionment
drinking?
is bourbon and acceptance. I learned this from 12 Steps. Acceptance, and not Alcoholics Anonymous, obviously, but different 12 Steps programs. But acceptance is the key to all the answers. The key to all my problems today. The answer to all my problems today. I think what I'm trying to do is having a real relationship with reality. I want to have as authentic and honest a relationship with reality as possible. And what we're talking about here with the cult of Trumpism is that Trump is not new. Like, cult people, even in position as high as presidents, have happened long before Trump. They've happened all throughout history. I forget the guy from Argentina not too long ago was one, but you have fascists from the early 1900s, and then you just have just go find obscure countries. You're going to find some asshole dictator at some point manipulating, finding, inciting fervor, really exploiting the insecurities of people, taking advantage of famines, taking advantage of poverty, taking advantage of whatever it may be to gain power for themselves. That is not new. What my hope is that we will create a world where those individuals, which will never go away, I think we will always have those kinds of individuals, but can we create a world where those kind of individuals can't easily get their way into places of power?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what that will take, but can we do that?
That is the challenge. I mean, I think that's a great, if I can wrap up with this, the great challenge, I think, for us as a society is, can we ever have the kinds of leaders who actually reflect the best of us? Not perfect leaders, maybe deeply flawed ones, but people who are aspiring to be just good people. That's the great cultural project, I believe. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this podcast. Lead Balloons, the alchemy of unpopular opinions. Signing off.
Peace, y'all.